In 1975, the National Academy of Sciences published a book with a bold title, The Winged Bean, a high-protein crop for the tropics. The book said this single plant could become the soybean of the tropics. Every part of it was edible: pods, leaves, flowers, roots, and seeds. The protein content rivaled soybeans. The nutritional profile exceeded most legumes on Earth. 50 years later, soybeans are a $90 billion American industry. The winged bean doesn't even have a Wikipedia section on U.S. cultivation. The National Academy of Sciences got excited. Then America forgot. I want to show you what they forgot and why it matters more now than it did in 1975. The winged bean is native to Southeast Asia. Its scientific name is Sophocarpus tetragonalobus, which is a mouthful, so everyone calls it the winged bean. As the name comes from the pods. They have 4 longitudinal ridges or wings running along their length that make them look like nothing else in your garden. Beautiful, distinctive, impossible to confuse with any other bean. Here's what makes this plant genuinely unusual. Most crops give you one edible product. Tomatoes give you fruit. Carrots give you a root. Wheat gives you grain. The winged bean gives you 5. The immature pods taste like a cross between green beans and asparagus. Crisp, slightly sweet, excellent raw in salads, or stir-fried for 2 minutes. The flowers are edible, mild, slightly mushroomy, tossed into salads or fried as fritters across Southeast Asia. The leaves cook down like spinach. The mature seeds inside dried pods contain 35 to 40% protein, directly comparable to soybeans at 36%, and the tuberous roots contain 15 to 20% protein, which is extraordinary for a root crop. Potatoes have about 2%. 1 plant, 5 food products, complete protein in the seeds. That's not marketing language. That's what the National Academy of Sciences saw in 1975, and what prompted them to write an entire book about it. Let me put the protein numbers in context because they matter. Soybeans contain about 36 grams of protein per 100 grams of dried seed. Winged bean seeds contain 35 to 40 grams depending on the variety. So they're equivalent to soybeans, and in some varieties they exceed them. But the comparison gets more interesting. Soybeans require specific growing conditions: deep fertile soil, consistent moisture, a long warm season, and heavy inoculation with nitrogen-fixing bacteria. They're an industrial crop that works best at industrial scale. Home gardeners can grow soybeans, but the yield per plant is modest and the harvest is labor-intensive. Winged beans fix their own nitrogen more aggressively than most legumes. They grow vertically on trellises, meaning they produce significant yield in a small footprint. A 10-foot row of winged beans on a trellis can produce more edible food than a 10-foot row of soybeans, because you're eating the pods, the flowers, the leaves, and the seeds. You're harvesting from the same plant multiple ways across the entire growing season, not waiting for one harvest at the end. The tuberous roots add another dimension. After the first year, winged bean plants develop underground tubers with protein content that puts every other root crop to shame. 15 to 20% protein in a root vegetable. Sweet potatoes have about 1.5%. Regular potatoes have 2%. The winged bean root is in a completely different category. The amino acid profile of winged bean seeds is comparable to soybeans, with strong lysine and leucine content. The FAO has recognized the winged bean as one of the most nutritionally balanced single-species food sources in the plant kingdom. So if the National Academy of Sciences backed this plant in 1975 and the FAO endorses it, why did America ignore it? 2 reasons, both economic. First, soybeans were already deeply embedded in American agriculture by 1975, and billions of dollars in infrastructure, processing plants, export contracts, seed companies, university research programs, all built around soybeans. Introducing a competing protein crop threatened existing investments. The agricultural establishment didn't need a better soybean. They needed the soybean they already had to stay profitable. Second, the winged bean is tropical. It's day-length sensitive, meaning it flowers when days get shorter. Late summer and fall in most of America. In tropical regions near the equator, day length is consistent year-round and the plant produces continuously. In the American South, it produces pods through summer, but doesn't set seed until fall, giving a limited window before frost kills the plant. North of Zone 8, the season is simply too short for full seed maturity in most years. And this is a real limitation. I'm not going to pretend it isn't. The winged bean is not going to replace soybeans in Nebraska. But here's what gets conveniently overlooked. Tens of millions of Americans live in zones 8 through 11. Southern Florida, the Gulf Coast, Texas, the desert Southwest, Southern California, Hawaii. In these areas, winged bean grows beautifully, and even in zones 6 and 7, gardeners can harvest immature pods, flowers, and leaves all summer long. You lose the dried seeds and tubers, but you still get 3 out of 5 food products from a single plant. The real question isn't whether winged bean can grow everywhere. It can't. The question is why it isn't grown anywhere in America despite working perfectly in regions where 40 million people live. The answer, again, is simple. No seed company profits from a crop that isn't already established. No university researches a crop that has no industry funding. No extension office recommends a crop that nobody's heard of. The cycle of invisibility is self-reinforcing. Let me tell you what winged beans taste like, because I think taste is what actually converts people. Young pods, harvested when they're about 6 to 8 inches long and the seeds inside are still tiny, are the most commonly eaten part worldwide. The texture is crisp, snappy, similar to a good green bean, but with more substance. The flavor has a nuttiness that green beans lack, with a hint of something between asparagus and snow peas. Eaten raw, they're refreshing. In Thailand, they're sliced thin and served in salads with coconut dressing. In Myanmar, they're stir-fried with garlic and shrimp paste. In the Philippines, they go into soups and stews. For American kitchens, think of them as a direct replacement for green beans in any recipe. But more interesting, blanch them for 2 minutes and toss with butter and salt. Stir-fry with garlic, soy sauce, and sesame oil. Roast at 400 degrees for 15 minutes until the edges caramelize. Add raw slices to any salad for crunch and protein. The flowers are a delicacy. They taste mildly sweet with a mushroom-like quality. In Southeast Asian cuisine, they're battered and fried or tossed raw into salads for color and flavor. They're beautiful. Pale blue to purple. Edible flowers that actually taste good and contribute nutrition, not just decoration. The leaves cook exactly like spinach. Sauté with garlic and olive oil. Then add to soups in the last few minutes. They're slightly thicker than spinach leaves, so they hold up better in cooking. Nothing fancy required. Dried seeds are prepared like any dried bean. Soak overnight, cook for an hour, use in any recipe that calls for beans. The flavor is richer than navy beans, slightly sweet, closer to chickpeas. They make excellent hummus and bean soups. The tubers are the hardest part to access because they take a full growing season to develop. Peel and cook them like potatoes. Boil, roast, mash. The texture is similar to a waxy potato, but with a nutty sweetness. 15 to 20% protein in something that cooks and tastes like a potato. If you live somewhere warm enough to grow the full cycle, these roots alone justify planting winged beans. Growing winged beans is straightforward if you understand what the plant needs. It's a tropical vine. It needs warmth, sun, and something to climb. Think of it as growing pole beans. If you've done that, you can grow winged beans. Start seeds indoors 4 to 6 weeks before your last frost date. Soak seeds overnight before planting. The seed coat is hard and soaking speeds germination by a week. Plant 1 inch deep in small pots. Germination takes 7 to 14 days. Transplant outside after all danger of frost has passed, and nighttime temperatures stay consistently above 60 degrees. This is important. Winged beans stall in cold soil and cold nights. Don't rush it. A late May or early June transplant in most of the South works well. Provide a sturdy trellis. This plant climbs aggressively. 6 to 10 feet is common. Then a simple structure of poles and string works fine. Cattle panel leaned against a wall is perfect. The vines are vigorous and will fill whatever support you give them. Full sun, regular water, especially during flowering. Winged beans are legumes, so they fix nitrogen and don't need heavy feeding. A side dressing of compost at planting time is plenty. In zones 9 through 11, the plant will flower and set seed before frost. You'll get the full 5-part harvest: pods, flowers, leaves, seeds, and roots. In zones 7 and 8, focus on pod and leaf harvest through summer. You'll likely get some flowers too. Seeds may or may not mature before first frost, depending on your specific season length. In Zone 6 and North, treat it as an annual for pod and leaf production only. Still worth growing. The pods alone are a unique and delicious crop you cannot find at any grocery store in America. Seeds are available from specialty suppliers. Baker Creek sometimes carries them. Tradewinds Fruit has them. Online seed swaps often have them. Search for Sophocarpus tetragonalobus or simply winged bean seeds. They're not expensive. A single packet gives you more than enough to fill a trellis and save seed for the following year. Here's the bigger picture. America imports billions of dollars of soybeans to countries that could grow their own protein crops. Meanwhile, a plant that matches soybeans in protein, exceeds them in versatility, and grows in tropical and subtropical conditions around the world sits in obscurity because one book from 1975 wasn't enough to overcome an entrenched industry. For home gardeners, now the calculation is simpler. If you live anywhere warm, the winged bean gives you more types of food from one plant than anything else you can grow. Pod harvests start about 60 days after transplanting. Flowers appear shortly after. Leaves are available the entire growing season. Seeds mature in 3 to 4 months. Roots develop by end of season. That's fresh vegetables from early summer through fall, dried protein for winter storage, and a root crop at the end. All from seeds that cost a few dollars and a trellis made from scrap wood. No other single crop in your garden does that. Not tomatoes, not squash, not beans, not corn. Nothing comes close to the winged bean's ratio of food diversity per square foot of garden space. If you're in a warm climate and you're not growing winged beans, you're working harder than you need to for less food than you could have. Subscribe. Every week I cover one crop that seed catalogs ignore, nurseries don't stock, and grocery stores have never heard of. Next week, a vegetable that stores in frozen ground for 6 months, tastes like oysters cooked in butter, and was in every European seed catalog until 1955. Then every company dropped it in the same decade. I'll tell you what happened. That's next week. Hit subscribe so you don't miss it.